guys, Houndish here, and today I've just got a quick update regarding Destiny 2. So in the recent update from Bungie, one of the key missing things was any real indications for change in the sandbox of the game. But since then we have had a little bit of an update from Barrett, which I want to talk about. But firstly, Sandbox is of course really important because it incorporates weapon tuning, time to kill, player movement, cooldowns, ability power, ammo inventory, and a whole bunch of other stuff which affects how powerful we feel in a game like Destiny. We've had a lot of conversations about endgame and systems, but I think things like Mayhem in PvP have really demonstrated why power is important in the game, not just for fans of Mayhem in particular, but it generally gives us a taste of how altering cooldowns and core combat tools really affects fun in the game. So I'm going to break down the brief update and also give some thoughts, because with actual sandbox changes apparently coming in the spring, now is the time for feedback. So this is what Barrett had to say. Destiny 2 needs more weapons that matter, both in power and the hunt to acquire them. Exotics need to live up to their name. The most skillful or visceral weapons like snipers, shotguns and fusion rifles need to return to glory. We're on it. And he adds that this might not have come across strong enough in the update. The Sandbox team is amazingly talented and are hard at work on changes. So it's good that Chris recognizes openly that there are some real issues with some of the weapons. Most of us really appreciate the more candid communication from Bungie, and I'll talk more about it in a moment, but in the official capacity of the update, this is what we heard about sandbox adjustments. So for the spring going into season 3, sandbox adjustments based on player feedback and data from the live game. The sandbox team will share specific changes as we lead up to season 3. They also added that exotic weapon and armor will be receiving a comprehensive design pass to ensure they stand out from the rest of the gear and offer new, exciting, powerful ways to play. On top of this, in fall 2018 or sooner, they did list weapon slot and archetype improvements, as well as pinnacle weapon and gear improvements. Now, weapon slot and archetype adjustments is an interesting way to put that. Archetype improvements refers specifically to, weapon types, things like sniper rifles, but weapon slot improvements is a very interesting term, and it can be interpreted in a number of ways really, but there are some commonly discussed possibilities. Firstly, are they going to revert to the original weapon system from Destiny 1? Now, if you put everything that they've said together, sure, it's possible. The issue is that to completely revert to the old system would take a lot of work and reorganization in the weapons themselves. In Destiny 1, we had a select number of energy or elemental primary weapons in the primary slot, but now we have essentially a 50-50 split because of the two weapon slots that we have. So there would have to be some decision making around, well, do we have a 50-50 energy and kinetic weapon split in slot 1? Is there a more elegant alternative to that? I'm not entirely sure, but there is another thing to consider, and that's that we're missing machine guns in the game right now, and that also means that we're left with rockets and grenade launchers, as well as, some possible future exotics, a sleeper simulant type thing maybe. Either way, these would be the only things populating that heavy slot in this scenario. So you could say bring back machine guns, and I'd really love to see that happen, but again, it would mean a lot of balancing, especially for PvP, because in my opinion, that is why Bungie took machine guns away. If you look at how heavy ammo inventory works right now in PvP, if you gave a machine gun more than 15 rounds, it would easily become the number one choice for general Crucible, at least if the machine gun was behaving as powerfully as we would want it to. And that's pretty much what happened in Destiny 1. It became, the optimal choice for general Crucible, and I get the feeling that Bungie didn't like that, and I know that a lot of players didn't like it either. Just to note though, I personally don't have an issue with machine guns. I'd love to see them again. I'm just trying to explain some of the major reasons that machine guns probably were left out of the game for now. But what do you guys think? How do you interpret weapon slot improvements? Would you like to see the old system return? I have heard a few people who really like the current system, but there is also a lot of conversation about the original system, and I think a lot of people would be happy to see it. But, this is also an opinion formed around how things currently work. If people didn't feel so strongly that some of the heavies, snipers in particular, weren't in such a bad spot, then this could be a little bit different. But, for snipers, to take that example, flinch and sway, even zoom, just makes them feel horrible to use in comparison to what we had in Destiny 1. In PvP, you don't really get enough ammo when you consider how effective and usable they are in most instances, and then in PvE, there are simply more powerful weapons with better ammo inventory and ease of use. Whatever happens to the weapon slots though, the heavies, they need looking at. The the ammo in certain PvE and PvP content needs to be addressed as well, and it's good to know that Chris Barrett agrees with that. I just think that the fact that we didn't see more specifics about Sandbox and how that might relate to some of the PvP stuff for a lot of people, you know, definitely was a bit disappointing. On the front of Chris pointing out the ways that we acquire, you know, some of the gear, he's basically talking about, I guess, questification. That was a word we used a lot when the Taken King came in. You know, they questified some of the hunt for some of the pieces of gear, but they did it in really cool ways with the secrets and all of that kind of stuff. You know, I would love to see those quests return, and it does look like that is going to be a focus for Bungie. But back to the Sandbox, of course, on top of weapons, things like cooldowns for supers, grenades, of course with the right PvE versus PvP tuning, really need to be looked at. On top of this, movement speed, pace in the game, those elements that create the more frenetic side of Destiny need to be bumped up. Now, this side of the conversation for me is much harder to break down and really understand outside of, you know, what I just mentioned. There are a number of reasons that power and the element of power in the game needs to be addressed, and I think the conversation about weapons really indicates how meaningful changes are going to mean a lot of work for the developer. It's worth saying though that Bungie are doing what they describe as a rework of the mod system in the game, and if they're going to make mods as impactful as they say, then, you know, they could have a reasonable effect on the Sandbox as well, but we'll have to wait and see. Primarily though, the Sandbox is totally worth discussing right now because how much fun we're having, you know, is a pretty big deal, isn't it? The game needs a lot of work on the end game and the progression stuff, but I think it also needs it in the Sandbox. So I wanted to break down the brief update about some of the goals from Chris Barrett. I think it's a very valid discussion, and I want to know what you guys think as well. Like I said, now is the time for feedback. Let's make our thoughts heard as Bungie lead up to this first major Sandbox update. It's the first opportunity so far that we know is coming up as far as, you know, those changes, so it's going to be relatively soon as well. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, like I said, guys. But if you have enjoyed the video, a like is very much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe if you want to see more Destiny 2 content. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and watching, guys, and for now, I hope you have an awesome day.